Wait, you're a Bears fan and you're not subscribed to my channel? Before this video starts, make sure to 1. Hit the subscribe button below to catch all Bears content right here on this podcast. 2. Hit the bell notification because you, my friend, are a diehard Bears fan. And 3. Like this video and tell all the Bears fans you know about the channel. Alright, that's better. Now that you're actually subscribed to the channel, make sure to bear down and enjoy this video.
Now this is a podcast all about Bears. You either cheering for this team or just pulling your hair. I like to take a minute, just sit right back and tell you how I became the #1 Bears fan. That boy's Benny Hunter. Cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic, cake on the mic. People, this the intro. Sacramento, California, born and raised. And Antelope is where I spend most of my days. Talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down, bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears actually have a football game this weekend. The Chicago Bears have a football game this weekend. If that does not pump you up, I'm not sure if you're actually a Bears fan. Yes, I know, it's just preseason. It's not meaningful. It won't count against our record. But we actually get to watch Bears football. And better yet, we actually get to watch Justin Fields play for the very first time in a Chicago Bears uniform. Before I get any further in today's episode of Keek on the Mic, I just want to give you guys a rundown of what's going to be going on during this episode. Every week, starting with this game, even though it's preseason, I am going to be doing a pregame show and a postgame show. That's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time on this podcast, but obviously I started the podcast after the season, so I haven't gotten the chance to do it. So every single week, including preseason, I'll be doing a pregame show and a postgame show of every single game, going over to the keys of the game, players to watch, all that good stuff. So here is my offer to you guys, to the listeners of the show. If you guys ever want to try to come on to the podcast, just comment down below, message me, whatever you need to do. And if I feel like I want to have you on the show and I feel like you're going to bring a lot of good insight to that week's podcast, I will most definitely bring you on and talk about that week's game and just talk about Bears football. I would love to have you on. So if you guys are interested in that opportunity to come on to Keek on the Mic, feel free to comment below, DM me, whatever you need to do, and we can definitely discuss getting you on Keek on the Mic. So, the Chicago Bears have a football game. It's against the Miami Dolphins this weekend, August 14th, and I am excited. I'm excited to see Bears football. I'm excited to see Justin Fields. I'm excited to see the Bears defense under Sean Desai. I'm actually also excited to see Andy Dalton and see what he brings to the table, even though it's only going to be for maybe a series. I'm still excited to see everything the Chicago Bears, Matt Nagy, has been working on leading up to this very first preseason game. Most of you guys already know that the Bears have been holding joint practices with the Miami Dolphins all week long. What I've been hearing from reports as that they've been saying that the defense has been very dominant and the offense has been okay. What they mean by that is the defense has been disruptive. They look like the 2018 Bears defense. And that was the hope for not only me, but a lot of Bears fans. And what they mean by the offense being just okay, they mean that it hasn't been pretty. It's been positive days and there's been negative days. And that's for both quarterbacks. Justin Fields has looked rusty in a couple of days and looked really good in a couple of days. And the same thing goes for Andy Dalton. But there hasn't been a consistent flow of the offense quite yet. And I truly think the reasoning for that is the offensive line has been bad. And when I mean bad, I mean we just haven't seen them together quite yet. They have been decimated by injuries to start training camp leading up to this very first preseason game. So we haven't even seen our full starting group together. And to me, that is very concerning, especially thinking that we only have 3 preseason games. So the Bears only have 2 of their 5 starting linemen healthy. And this list includes James Daniels with a quadriceps. Jermaine Ifedi, he has hip injuries. Tevin Jenkins. He's dealing with a back injury, which that is a whole different podcast that I can do a topic on Tevin Jenkins. But the Bears knew about the injury of Tevin Jenkins and his back injuries in college, and they still drafted him. We took the chance, and this is what happens. I'm not saying that as a career ender for Tevin Jenkins. I'm not saying he's not going to be a good football player, but it's definitely concerning that he has yet to practice. I think he has missed, 14 straight days now? So we definitely need to get to the bottom of that, and hopefully Tevin Jenkins comes back strong and healthy and ready to contribute to this offensive line. And then last but not least, Alex Bars with a knee injury, and this just happened a couple of days ago. And Alex Bars is a guy that he's not a starter, but if we need him to start, he can. So right now, going into this first preseason game, the Bears are looking like this. Left tackle, Elijah Wilkinson. Left guard, Cody Whitehair. Center, Sam Mustipher. Right guard, Arlington Hambright. And right tackle, LaJavius Simmons. So when you look at the right guard and right tackle, for example, those two guys were picked in the 7th round of last year's draft, which is not a bad thing. Charles Leno was picked in the 7th round, ended up having a really pretty good career with the Chicago Bears. The thing that sucks about going into this first preseason game, you need to have all your players as healthy as possible so you can create this competition, so you could see what you have. Most of these guys are going to be starting with the first stringers on Saturday are usually our backups. So it's going to be really hard to see where this offensive line is at, and it's really going to be hard to see where this offense as a whole is at if our offensive line is not even healthy. How long is this going to take? I don't know. I don't have any answers to that. But all I know is that the offensive line keeps dropping like flies. And I'm not sure what's going on, and I'm really not sure how to feel about it. Does it concern me right now in the first preseason game? No, not really. Because I do think that eventually, hopefully, we get some of these guys back in time for week 1 against the Los Angeles Rams. So right now, my concern level is at probably like 50%, but by week 3 of preseason going into that week 1 against the Rams, if we're still looking at the same offensive line right now, I will be concerned as a Bears fan, and I will be concerned for Andy Dalton's health. And I'm not trying to be funny. I think I would literally be concerned about Andy Dalton being behind that offensive line. And maybe this offensive line works out. Maybe for right now, they hold down the fort. But that's not the point. The point is we haven't gotten to see any competition within the offensive line because everyone is hurt. So hopefully things get figured out. And we'll see what happens coming up in this first preseason game. It's going to be interesting to see how this offensive line holds up against the Miami Dolphins front 7, especially their first stringers. So going into this first preseason game, everyone obviously knows that the big storyline is Justin Fields' debut as a Chicago Bear. And that is going to be the main focus. Matt Nagy has already came out and said that, of course, Andy Dalton will start, probably get a couple possessions, probably like 8 plays or so, just depending on how the game's going. But then it will be Justin Fields' time, and he made it very clear that that's who they want to see. They want to see Justin Fields in the game, and so do Bears fans. So we'll probably see Justin Fields probably into the second half, and Matt Nagy even said that it may get into the fourth quarter, which is going to be fun. It's going to be fun to see where Justin Fields is at and what he needs to improve on. And maybe Justin Fields goes out there and shocks all of us. Maybe he goes out there and tears it up to the point where even the coaches are like, okay, we may need to reconsider who starts at quarterback for the Chicago Bears. When I think about Justin Fields' debut, for some reason I keep going to Russell Wilson. When Russell Wilson was drafted by the Seahawks, even though Russell Wilson was drafted in the 4th or 5th round, they played Russell Wilson, and for those first 4 preseason games, Russell Wilson took off. That is how I'm feeling about Justin Fields. Something about this situation seems that, yes, Andy Dalton is the starter. Whatever, let him start. But if Justin Fields, for these 3 games, which he's going to be getting a lot of playing time, if Justin Fields comes in, and even against the second and third stringers, just tears it up, the Bears coaches may need to have a conversation about who should be our week 1 starting quarterback. And that is going to be a big storyline, not only going into this first preseason game, but for the rest of the preseason, to see if Justin Fields, how he plays. If he looks ready, he looks confident, he looks like he's commanding the huddle, all those good things, how will that affect the coach's decision to either, okay, we're just going to stick with Andy Dalton, or, you know what, let's put the rookie in there because we think he gives us the best chance to win. So reports have been indicating that this week in practice that Justin Fields has been doing pretty well against the Miami Dolphins defense. Even their first stringers, he's doing pretty well. And some of the videos that we're seeing and some of the reports that we're getting is true. Justin Fields looks like the real deal, which is why we drafted him. So Bears fans should be excited. Bears fans should be excited to watch Justin Fields play for the whole game. And who knows if Nick Foles gets some time? I really don't care. But Bears fans should be excited to see Justin Fields play. So along with Andy Dalton, I don't expect any of the first stringers to really play that much. They'll probably get the same amount of time as Andy Dalton, probably about a couple of possessions, and sometimes that could be 8 to 10 plays. So some things to watch for that I'm watching for in this first preseason game is, of course, Justin Fields. We just talked about it. It's his first NFL game. How will he command the huddle? How will he do against adversity if he has any? For example, if he throws an interception, I want to see how he comes back in that next possession in response. It's okay if he throws a couple interceptions. Those are learning curves that we need to see. Get those interceptions out in the preseason. It's okay. I just know how NFL fans can react. If he comes in and he looks awful, then people are going to overreact. Try not to overreact if he struggles. It's his first NFL game, and he needs the adversity. He needs those learning curves in order to become a better NFL quarterback. And another thing, how comfortable will he look? How comfortable will he look inside the pocket? That's going to be a big one, knowing that our offensive line is kind of in a disarray right now. So those are just some of the things that I'm watching for in terms of Justin Fields. Another thing that I'm looking for in this first preseason game, not only in this first preseason game, but in the preseason in general, is the defense under Sean Desai. This will be the first look at our defense under the new defensive coordinator, Sean Desai. So obviously, you know, the defense kind of took a dip with Chuck Pagano. But now you bring in a guy that is bringing in a defense similar to Vic Fangio, where when we had Vic Fangio back in 2018, the defense was amazing. So now you bring in Sean Desai. It's going to be a new culture. Even though we're not going to see a lot, we're going to see the direction that Sean Desai wants this defense to go. So I'm excited to see what he brings to the table, even though we're not going to see our first stringers for very long. Another thing I'm looking out for is other rookies. Of course, everyone's excited about Justin Fields. I am too. Super excited to see Justin Fields. But I'm also excited to see the other rookies. This includes Thomas Graham, Khalil Herbert, Larry Barone. All those guys, I feel, are going to be quality football players for this team. Their progression is just as important for the success of this Chicago Bears football team. So I'm excited to see what these rookies bring to the table, not only in this week's game, but for the remainder of the preseason. And then another thing that I want to watch for, and this is also another thing that's not only going to be for this one game, it's going to be for the whole entirety of the preseason. It's the competition. So when you look at the competition, it's everywhere on the football team. Let's look at the cornerback 2 position. Kendall Vildor versus Desmond Trufant. I think those are going to be the two main guys trying to fight for that cornerback 2 spot opposite of Jalen Johnson. We got rid of Kyle Fuller. Someone needs to replace him. So this is going to be a big competition battle that I'm looking forward to watching for the remainder of the preseason. The second competition battle, Riley Ridley versus Javon Wims for that final receiver spot. I've talked about it on past podcasts that I think these two guys are going to be battling for that final spot. It sounds like both of them have been doing pretty well in practice so far with both quarterbacks. And I think that's what's going to come down to. Who has a better connection with Justin Fields? I could sit here and say who has a better connection with Andy Dalton, but does it really matter? Justin Fields is our future. Who has the better connection with Justin Fields? Because whoever has the better connection with Justin Fields, I think, makes this football team. Last but not least, and I know I hate to bring this up, but Andy Dalton versus Justin Fields. This is a big one, and Bears fans may call me crazy, and you guys can even call me crazy down below in the comments, but this is still very much a competition. I think Matt Nagy is saying what people want to hear, right? All right, we paid Andy Dalton all that money. I get it. We paid him 1 year, $10 million. He should start, and for the most part, I'm in agreement with that. Andy Dalton should start at least 4 games. Let's see what he offers. If he does good, I'm happy. I really am. If he does bad, that means we get to see Justin Fields. It's kind of like a win-win in that situation. But like I said earlier in the podcast, if Justin Fields comes in and has 3 great games, even against the second and third stringers, if he comes in and just lights it up, the coaches may need to sit down and think very carefully who they should start. That's just my thinking process. I'm not sure how you guys feel about that, but that is just my thinking process. I am rooting for Andy Dalton. I hope Andy Dalton does good, because if Andy Dalton does good, that means the Chicago Bears are doing good. All these Bears fans saying, well, Andy Dalton sucks. Oh, I hate Andy Dalton. Let's stop doing that. We are just fans. Give the man a chance, because if Andy Dalton does good, that means our Chicago Bears are doing good. So until the coaches say that Justin Fields is the starter, Andy Dalton is the Chicago Bears QB1, and let's root for Andy Dalton to do good. So like I said, even though it's just preseason and it's not meaningful football at all, it's still going to be very, very fun to watch our Chicago Bears play, especially at home at Soldier Field this weekend. And like I told you guys before, make sure you guys keep a lookout for my post-game analysis of every single game, along with the pregame show of each week. And like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you guys are interested in coming on to the show, make sure you message me, and we will try to get you on Keek on the Mic. But before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms by just clicking the links down below in the description. Make sure you share this episode of Keek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, I'll be back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Keek on the Mic. Thanks, guys.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't Keek on the Mic.